All right, welcome to your daily signals briefing. We've gone through thousands of global data points from the last 24 hours to pull out the trends that really matter. Let's get right into it. So, what did the world really focus on? Well, the signals are showing a really interesting pattern. Public sector spending is absolutely in the driver's seat. The big AI build-out is starting to hit some very real physical limits. And cyber risk, well, it's quietly spreading its wings. We're going to unpack what all of that means. The raw numbers here tell a crystal clear story. Just look at procurement. It's dominating everything else with nearly 6,000 signals. This is, without a doubt, the loudest signal in the global economy right now. And it tells us one thing, loud and clear. Government spending is driving demand. And where is this signal coming from? Well, the UK is just miles ahead of everyone else, and that's almost entirely because of all that procurement activity. Now, in the US and China, it's a totally different story. Their signals are driven more by news flow, not so much by government contracts. Okay, so that's the 30,000-foot view. Now, let's zoom in. We're going to take a deep dive into the specific stories shaping these major economies and see how these big trends are actually playing out on the ground. We saw 4 critical themes emerge from all this data. State capacity, which is really just the power of government-led programs, the industrialization of AI, a return of trade uncertainty, and, of course, expanding cyber risk. Let's see how these forces are shaping things, starting in the United States. Over in the US, we're seeing this fascinating clash. The AI gold rush is literally slamming into real-world physical constraints. At the same time, regulators are keeping the heat on big tech, while a steady flow of defense contracts keeps pulling advanced manufacturing and AI companies deeper and deeper into that national security world. This really reframes the entire AI race, doesn't it? It's not just about who has the best chips anymore. The conversation now, especially from the big players, is about power grids, water rights, and local politics. The real bottleneck for AI is shifting from pure computing power to a much more fundamental question: who's going to pay for all the infrastructure? Now, let's jump over to China, where the strategy seems to be twofold. First, you've got this laser-focused, state-directed push on key technologies. We're talking AI chips, 6G, robotics. And second, you have all this geopolitical maneuvering happening through trade, especially with Taiwan and in Africa. And this quote just perfectly captures Beijing's whole approach. This is not some passive plan. They're calling it an acceleration package. The government is literally pouring money into key sectors to move faster and scale bigger than anyone else, which tells you exactly where their priorities are. In the UK, there's this really fascinating push and pull going on. On one hand, rising inflation is squeezing households and basically tying the central bank's hands. But at the exact same time, the government is injecting a massive £15 billion into green home upgrades. That creates a huge new pipeline of work. It's a classic case of macroeconomic headwinds running straight into a wall of state-directed cash. All right, let's pull back and widen our lens a bit. Now it's time for a quick scan of the most important signals that are flashing across the rest of Europe and Asia. And we are seeing some pretty significant moves. In Japan, restarting the world's largest nuclear plant is a massive signal on energy security. India's app economy is absolutely roaring back, and it's being powered by AI assistants. And over in Europe, leadership changes in Germany can often hint at bigger strategic shifts, while a shakeup in the French luxury market suggests a major brand repositioning is probably on the way. A key concept that kept popping up in the data, especially around India, is this idea of strategic capacity. In a world where tariffs are on the rise, things like ports, logistics, and digital payment systems, they're not just economic tools anymore. They're actually becoming weapons of geopolitical leverage. So, what happens when we start connecting all these different dots? Let's take a look at the early signals that are showing us how the strategic map is being completely redrawn for the future. We've identified 6 major shifts that are just bubbling up to the surface. First, the return of tariff uncertainty. Second, AI is hitting the hard physical limits of our utilities. Third, enterprise AI is consolidating into these massive platforms. Fourth, there's a new focus on real, tangible energy security projects. Fifth, we're seeing fierce competition over the financial rails that move all our money. And finally, cyber risk is expanding into our cars and into the very AI tools we use every single day. So after sifting through all this data, all these signals, what's the one thing you really need to take away from the last 24 hours? What's the bottom line? It really boils down to 4 things. First, procurement is king. Public spending is what's driving the global economy right now. Second, the AI revolution is getting constrained by physical stuff, by infrastructure. Third, geopolitical trade risk isn't some theoretical problem anymore. It's an active factor in pricing. And finally, cyber risk is fundamentally shifting into new and honestly more dangerous territory. Our cars, our AI agents, and the open source code that underpins pretty much everything. So this is what the world focused on today. We are living in a world that's increasingly defined not by limitless growth, but by hard constraints in energy, in trade, and in security. And that leaves all of us with one really crucial question to think about. Is your strategy actually built for this new reality? If you want to dive deeper and see the full data map and all the sources that we used for this explainer, you can find everything on our site. You can also learn a bit more about the operating system that helps turn these kinds of global signals into actionable strategy. Thanks for tuning in.